Black Scully on check. Got a little zip up hoodie on check. Welcome to another marvelous episode. Started late today, and I feel like I've been on a great streak starting on time. Today had some technical difficulties, not gonna lie to you. For some reason, my OBS, if you ever used it before, wouldn't read my camera. I stopped the computer, restarted the computer, and then finally I figured it out. It just needed me to unplug it and plug it back up. Something stupid, but on today's docket, we got a lot to talk about today for our Into News segment. A lot happened yesterday. We found out that John Mateer is likely going to be out. The verbiage that they utilized was indefinitely, and then I've heard other sources say somewhere around 3 or 4 weeks is how long that John Mateer is going to be out. We're going to talk about that today and that impact. Also, Mike Gundy, a guy who's real respected in Stillwater, Oklahoma, has been fired. I believe I saw a stat that said he is 0-11, dating back since last year against his, last P4 teams. That record is bad, and you think about he's done so much for that university, but I continue to tell each and every one that watch this show that college football is a what have you done for me lately sport. It will continue to be what have you done for me lately, and it's heartbreaking, but this is a results-driven business. You hear a lot of companies talk about, they are a results-driven business. Well, college football may be the most results-driven business. It's just the way it is. Like, if you're not winning ball games and you're paid X amount of money and, that school or that program feels like that they have given you all of the resources that they've needed to give you to win, then that's what happens. That's the name of the game. Also, for our Into the News segment, we're going to talk about a little bit more about Clemson's collapse. We've heard from Dabo Swinney, and he's just talked about the amount of pain he's in, and I'm sure a lot of that is probably mental and physical, to be completely transparent with you. So we're going to talk more about that. Eli Drinkwitz, Ahmad Hardy should be 100% in the Heisman, and he shouldn't even have to say that. We, the media, and you can't even say that anymore because what's been going on with the AP poll recently. So we can't say that at all, to be, completely transparent with you. But, we should be able to get this right. And granted, they don't hand out Heisman's in September. We still got a few more months of college football to play, and they don't hand it out to the second Saturday in December each and every year. So we got time, but Ahmad Hardy is definitely balling right now, and Eli Drinkwitz shouldn't have to say that. So we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Also, the Ole Miss quarterback debate, we just talked about that on Overreaction Monday night, and I feel like it's a trending topic. They do got the Magnolia Bowl this weekend versus LSU. So, of course, it's just great talking points. Also, Steve Spurrier speaks on Billy Napier, and I feel like it's been a little over 2 weeks since we've mentioned Steve Spurrier on this show. You guys know I'm a huge Steve Spurrier fan, so we're going to talk about that as well. Also, SEC officially released their schedule for 2026 through 2029. I was debating with Jalen yesterday. You guys know Jalen. He's me and Jalen do college football showdown together. Jalen does have a YouTube channel called Just Jalen. He does a phenomenal job. He's an outstanding football storyteller. And shout out to East Coast Gridiron. He's in the building already. I'm sure he was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. It's 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time at Wise and Governor Live. What's happening, player? Appreciate you being here each and every episode. But yeah, so it's one of those things. He's like, yo, I think you should go live. I should have went live. I ended up watching ATL. Then I think I started watching Everybody Hates Chris, and I was on my U couch. You guys hear me talk about all the time. I love my couch the way that Heathcliff Huxtable loved his couch. And yeah, I went to sleep, so I completely missed it. But I'll give you an update for everybody that missed it. Now I'm mad that I didn't do an emergency pod last night because they released a schedule for the next 3 years. So we're going to talk about that today as well. And then also, I told you guys yesterday we'll be doing Big 12 report cards. We got Big 12 report cards in today, and you guys will find out the grades that I've given the teams in the Big 12 over the first quarter. There's a couple teams that I'm harsh on just because my expectations versus reality, and you'll see that be a current trend. Like, damn, Governor, you're a little hard on this team. You guys already know I'm going to be probably a lot more, harder on Baylor than I would any other team, just because my expectation was through the roof on that program. And then finally, we got CFB Nation Top 25. It's out. Shout out to Nino. I know he's been waiting for the results. I love having it being extremely consistent. That's important to me. So if it's X amount of people the first time we released the poll, I want it to be X amount of people every time we release the poll. So the poll is out. We want it to be out earlier, but like I said, we send the forms out, and we do quality assurance and making sure we don't have any AP poll blunders in there. There are a couple of spots I'm unhappy with on here, but that's just the way the poll works. And I think you find out a lot more about polling, once you have your own poll. So, Governor College Football, hashtag go CFB. CFB Nation, your only college football destination. Let's get it. Governor of college football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's
Two
CJ
great
on
defensive
the
minds.
track.
They have to be better on that side of the It's September 24th. Happy Wednesday to everybody. I hope you all are having fruitful and productive days here in Fredericksburg, Virginia. It's like overcast skies. I believe it's going to rain around 4 p.m., but it's still not going to dampen my day at all. I think we are going live with College Football Showdown tomorrow. I got to get in contact with everybody for the Governor Guest Week I'm trying to have next week. And hopefully it's the next 2 weeks. I know, my dog Dante going to be on the show. So we got to figure that out. I got to see if this works for his time slot. If not, we'll probably do a segment that's pre-recorded, and then I'll play it live at my 11 o'clock time slot. And I'm sure it probably won't work for some of the other guests. I'm not going to tell you guys who they are, because I know they are professors, and they're probably, at work during this time period. So we'll probably have to do the same thing. Still trying to get a couple others to be a part of this. I want it to be one of those things where, of course, if you're a friend of the program, you'll probably get more airtime. Me and Dante will probably end up talking a whole episode about college football, and it'll be interesting to see where the conversation goes. But, there'll be a couple of episodes where there's multiple people joining the show, and that's the way we're going to do it. So Mike Gundy fired. This should be a surprise to anyone. I was watching a short this morning, East Coast Gridiron, shout out to my dog Dante, that they released in July saying he should be fired. And this seeing him do the updated, like, we called this back in July. And I love when I see creators, call their shot, and then they're rewarded for the shot that they called. And then you get to do an updated video to that. So that's phenomenal. I do hate it for Coach Gundy, because he's done so much for that program. He really has. I'm interested to see what their approach is in finding a head coach, because I believe some schools, I think if we're looking at it and we're being honest, like UCLA and Virginia Tech, outstanding examples of schools that it's bigger than a coach. Yes, if you want to sit there, blame somebody, you want to make somebody the scapegoat, coach is probably the easiest person to make the scapegoat. Not saying that he didn't deserve to be fired, but I'm just saying the way that, analytically, the way that people look at it. Yes, okay, it's his time to go. So who you going to get to replace him? Will he have the buy-in from the brass of the program? That's, the admin, donors, boosters, like, will he have buy-in from there? And then what will it be like with the players? Because now we have a 30-day window where people are going to be entering the transfer portal. And a lot of times I think schools look at it as, alrighty, our fan base pissed off, our boosters are pissed off, our donors are pissed off. How do we fix this? You say goodbye, coach, but when you say goodbye, coach, there are some players who said, hey, my only reason for coming here was Coach Gundy. So if you expect me to have allegiance or alliance with any of you, the only reason I came here was for the mullet. The mullet is gone and I am gone. That's the way it's going to work. It's an opportunity, especially if you're a player on that team, you haven't had the season that you had anticipated on having. This is a great way to get a red shirt year, go somewhere else, and figure it out. I believe that Mike Gundy will get another job. If I'm him, I'm probably taking a year off. You know what I'm saying? Moon and Dante, by the way, from East Coast Gridiron, had amazing conversation yesterday. I wish I had that tweet locked and loaded so I could pull it up. A sabbatical year wouldn't be bad for him at all. And when I say a sabbatical year, it's a position called the analyst position, I think, which is, in my opinion, if you attended a college, sometimes you hear that a professor's on sabbatical, and a sabbatical is pretty much research, but you get to chill at home. It's what it really is, or chill on vacation, but you still do research, and then you come back with the research that you found. But, I believe this would be a great opportunity for him to have a sabbatical year, maybe go be an offensive analyst somewhere, be a part of a winning organization, like, go be an offensive analyst at Georgia or something, college playoff berth. People talk about how great Mike Gundy, things have been since he arrived in Athens, and then, yes, Mike Gundy get another job. Or there's also another way that he can approach this thing, and he can also approach this thing by simply saying, hey, who's willing to offer me a job? Is there a P4 team right now that's willing to offer him a job? We'll have to wait and see. Would Virginia Tech be interested in Mike Gundy? Probably. But I think, like I said, handle the GM position first. I hear that Bruce Arians is going to help them out with this hire. Let me see. Oh, you sent it to? Hey, appreciate it, bro. I'm about to look at it right now. Yes, Moon had an incredible statement. Right, man. I appreciate you, Dante, man. You're a dog for real. So I'm about to get ready to load up this tweet by Moon. Him and Dante had outstanding conversation yesterday about this. And I love when people who are, just as passionate about college football as I am just have this type of talk. And me and my dog Squid Ten Toes had a great conversation like 2-3 in the morning. We're talking about college football at 2-3 in the morning. That's what I love about the 1%ers, bro. The 1%ers are just legit, man. So yeah, let me go ahead and save this now. Let's see here. See if I can screenshot it. Here we go. Yeah, I'm gonna pull this up right now. And we'll download it. Booyah. And I'm gonna pull this up now. I'm gonna add another image. But yeah, I just love outstanding conversation. Shout out to my dog Moon. I talked to him and Jalen, man. We was just laughing it up for hours yesterday, man. So sorry if this is a little difficult to see. But Moon, CFB Moon, our communication strategist, the reason that I'm able to go to a lot of the places that I go to is because him and D now. And he said, go energize. He said, go to TV, re-energize your brand, rebuild your reputation beyond the mullet, talk ball at a high level. He'll be back in college football in no time. And I believe that's an outstanding statement. Outstanding statement. I agree to a certain extent. Either go the TV route or go the sabbatical route. Like I said, go be an offense or defensive analyst somewhere. Be a part of a winning program. People talk about, because think about where Mike Bobo's career has gone. Mike Bobo was a coach at Colorado State. They were terrible like his first couple of years there. Took a pay cut and said, hey, I haven't earned my pay here. Let me take a pay cut and let me earn it. End up getting fired, right? Then he ends up at Auburn with him and Brian Harsin when Brian Harsin was the head coach at Auburn. And this is Bo Nix's second year, I believe, at Auburn. And it was a disaster, dude. It was an absolute disaster. Mike Bobo, I understood what he was trying to do. It just didn't work at that time in the SEC. He ended up being fired. Then he takes an analyst position with Georgia. And then Georgia's prior offensive coordinator, who is now with the Baltimore Ravens as their offensive coordinator, they had an opening. They said, hey, we got Mike Bobo as an offensive coordinator. Just pretty much had a sabbatical here. Boom. He slid right in, and now he's the offensive coordinator of the Georgia Bulldogs. So I agree. Either way, go to TV. I think he has one hell of a personality. And then what Dante said is something that I agree with 100%. He 100% mishandled the Ollie Gordon situation. The comment at Big 12 Media Days haunted him that entire season. Because, you look at it, heading into the 2024 college football season, a lot of people had, Oklahoma State up there for the teams that they believed that could win the conference. They 100% had them up there as a team that can absolutely, compete in that conference. And Todd Monken, that's what it is. Thank you. Todd Monken, who's offensive coordinator at Georgia, he's now with the Ravens, offensive coordinator, that allowed Mike Bobo to boom, go in there and be the offensive coordinator at Georgia. But, it's, I don't know. This is the part of college football I think a lot of us hate. You know what I'm saying? But it's a necessary evil. It's one of those things. So how does Oklahoma attack this thing? Oklahoma State, rather. How do they attack this? Do they go a GM route? How do you fix the program? How do you make the fan base happy again? How do you make the boosters want to be there again? There's a lot that they have to answer, to be honest with you. So once they figure all of that out, I think they will be okay. Okay, no, that thing, it is working. I thought it was acting up for a second. So that's what Mike Gundy. John Mateer had hand surgery. And I saw an amazing tweet, by the way, of someone saying that he sure picked a fine time to do it. As a competitor, that's just not how you think. That's not how you move. As a competitor, you always want to compete. But I'm sure the people around him, people closest to him said, hey, get this thing fixed because you don't want to deal with it in the offseason when you're getting ready for the NFL, right? As many people believe, this will be his final year in college football. So how long will he be out? What does that look like? How well does Hawkins run Oklahoma's system? And speaking of which, what's Oklahoma's next few games? I put that in my notes. Yeah, so I think one of those games is the Red River rivalry. I know this week they had a game that was a winnable game. Let me look at Oklahoma's schedule, but he looks to be out at least 3 to 4 weeks. Let's look at their schedule while he's gone. So yeah, they got October 4th. They got Kent State. They'll be fine. Great tune-up game. Then you got Red River rivalry. He's going to definitely miss that. They actually have a bye this week, so there's a bye. I think that's why it's an importance of him doing it now. Then you have Kent State. They'll handle business versus Kent State. Then you have Red River rivalry. He'll more than likely miss that game. We'll have to see. And then he has an opportunity to come back, against either South Carolina, and we know that game will be in Columbia, or against Ole Miss October 25th. If I'm betting on it, that October 25th will make it 5 weeks. So 4 or 5 weeks, however you look at it. So I will probably guess that he will come back even there, maybe with a slight possibility to come back versus South Carolina. So all in all, not too shabby. He'll miss 2 or 3 games, but they'll handle business versus Kent State, and then you got to be able to beat Texas. And can they beat Texas without John Mateer? That'll be interesting, but Hawkins will have time to learn and develop inside of the offense. So, all right, Dabo Swinney. Let's talk about Dabo Swinney. A lot of news circulating that, he just felt a lot of pain after the loss this past weekend. Clemson is 1-3. I've been very critical of Clemson only because my expectations for Clemson entering the year was through the roof. And like I said, he admitted he was in a lot of pain after the game. And, what does Clemson future look like? Will Dabo Swinney be there in 2026? How do the Brewsters feel? How do the donors feel? Because I know a lot of times people want to sit there and point to the fact like, hey, you don't utilize the portal. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't think this is a portal issue as it was in 2023. In 2023, I thought they could have utilized a number one wide receiver. Here you had a kid from East Lansing, and Keon Coleman, who was there to get, he ends up in Florida State in Tallahassee, and then Florida State ends up winning the conference, right? They could have used the number one wide receiver that year, and they did not utilize the portal and go get a guy like Keon Coleman. I don't think this year is like 2023 where you can see holes on their team. This ain't one of those things. They brought back an awful lot of talent this year. Number one in return of production. They were somewhere around 85% in return of production. And I think this is just simply an execution problem. And, when you can't execute, who you look at when you can't execute? Does that fall on the players, or does the onus falls on the coaching and your ability to prepare? When I tell you at the Syracuse game, and I never like to say this in college football because you can always come back in this sport, I always feel that way. But after Syracuse drove down, scored a touchdown, got that onside, it broke their will. It really did. You could just see life leave the sidelines. It really did. So, of course, Dabo Swinney is in pain. He hasn't experienced this, right? But it's not about dealing with, it's not necessarily about dealing with adversity. How do you bounce back from adversity? Because this truly like the first or second time he's dealt with true adversity. I know in 2023, we got the gentleman from the radio show, God Bless the Dead. He's no longer with us. That called Dabo Swinney out when they had a rough start back in, 2023. And, that's some adversity. But this year, I think the expectations were through the roof. Like, we weren't even thinking about just ACC with Clemson. It was almost a foregone conclusion. Like, hey, Clemson should be in the college football playoff, and they should be able to compete in the ACC, if not win the ACC, right? That was a lot of the expectation headed into the year. And what has happened, I'm not sure. I'm not able to answer it. I'm still dumbfounded by it. I still see 1-3, and the first thought comes to my mind is there's no way. Not with the talent on this roster, not with a guy like Garrett Riley at offensive coordinator, that they're 1-3. A lot of us would love to see, or, when will it be Gideon Davison season? A lot of the news I was hearing out of camp, especially in the spring, was that he was going to be the guy. Adam Randall was still the guy and getting, majority of the carries at running back. But I'm not sure. I can't quite place my finger on what's going on other than lack of execution. Is this a roster talent issue? I don't believe so. So I know a lot of people, are taking the angle that, well, Dabo doesn't use the transfer portal and people are going to want to get rid of him. Yeah, they want to get rid of him because he's not winning, but I don't think it's a transfer portal thing because I think this is the team that he truly developed. They're not executing, and I don't know who to place the onus on, to be honest with you. Eli Drinkwitz defends Ahmad Hardy. He shouldn't have to do this. Why does he have to do this? Like, you don't see Ahmad Hardy's stats, and I know that historically the Heisman has been like a quarterback award. Like, that's just what it has been. And we look at the award and there's always been a quarterback bias because when you think about college football and you think about teams, some of the first positions that you think of is quarterback. We got a great comment. I'm going to talk about it right now. It's from East Coast Gridiron. It reminds me of 2015 FSU team started with DeAndre Francois. I remember that tearing his knee against Alabama that first game. You're allowed to have down years, but Dabo needs to use the portal. I would agree with that. He does need to use the portal. This is, 2025. It is essential to use the portal. Now, what I will say is what I said earlier, that I don't think the reason that they're losing this year is because of the portal, because I believe he has the team and he developed the team. And, I believe, what Dabo does is transformational coaching. It's not a lot of transformational coaches left. It's a lot of transactional coaches. And I hate to call, Coach McGuire with his team doing so well right now down in Lubbock, a transactional coach. But what they did this year, the money that they spent on their defense is transactional in my opinion. But they're yielding a result. So for right now, we can call it transformational. But yeah, he's going to have to use the portal at some point. It's like, being in the NFL and not utilizing the free agency and building your team solely, based on the NFL draft. Now, I do prefer that method over the transfer portal method. I've 100% been on paper that I love the way Dabo does it. We're not saying it has to be, what they doing out in Boulder, where it's like, maybe 45 high school, 55 portal. It don't even got to be something that's 70-30 because we know you're never going to get at that because of the relationships that Dabo like to build. But if he can find a way, some way, some shape, some form, if he can find a way to get it to like, 85-15, 87-13, I think we'll be okay with that. The reason they are losing is coaching and not utilizing solid number 2 running back. Davidson has to play more. Agree with that 100%. Same issue that LSU will face later. Caden Durham can't carry them out there. I agree with that. And I think we see 100% eye to eye with LSU. They got a showdown this week in Oxford, Mississippi, and I'm interested to see how well they play. Speaking of Oxford, Mississippi, we got a quarterback debate down in Oxford. Dante, out of curiosity, who do you think should win this quarterback battle? Do you think it should be Trinidad Chambliss or do you think it's Austin Simmons? I think based on statistics, it's Chambliss. I think, coming into the season, I felt like, the reports I was hearing at least that, coming out of Oxford that, it was Austin Simmons' season. But, looking at this now, I'm not sure who the starting quarterback should be. And we do have unwritten rules, and you shouldn't lose your job, due to injury. But in a sport that's, so concentrated with what have you done for me lately, I think Trinidad Chambliss has earned the opportunity, man. And he's lit it up, bro. What? He got 719 yards. Bunch of rushing yards. He's been able to pass the ball. He's not turning the ball over as much as Austin Simmons is. It's going to be interesting. Trinidad Chambliss, 1,000%. I'm with you, brother. Steve Spurrier questions Billy Napier. This isn't a surprise if you know Steve Spurrier is a straight shooter. Florida being 1-3 is, I just don't get it. Did the media put too much stock in DJ Lagway's ability? Granted, the games that he started and finished, he was 6-0 a season ago. But, pedestrian isn't the word. I think we need a word worse than pedestrian. His numbers have been that bad. 5 interceptions versus LSU. What did he muster up this past weekend versus Miami? 67 yards passing. It's crazy. Austin is 19, sophomore. He'll learn more. He's learned nothing from Jackson Dart because he knew Dart was the starter. Trinidad had 51 touchdowns at Ferris State Facts. You made a video yesterday, Trinidad is a beast. Did I see that? I might have saw it because I ain't gonna lie. I look at a lot of your content, man, because I love when I find people who are like-minded, passionate. We may not see eye to eye on everything, but I just love people who are passionate. And it's, when you at the independent level, I don't think people ever realize that you don't have the same access to, some of the bigger names in media have. A lot of them have their notes. They show up and they're killing. I'm not going to take anything away from them. But, when you're on this side of it, you're creating your shorts, you're doing your set designs, you're trying to figure out the best way to hit the algorithm and how to do your description and your hashtags and all of that. It's on you. I'm the tech guy. I'm the set design guy. I'm the editor. Everything when it comes to my content. And I know Dante is the same way, and I respect it. I love the way his thumbnails look, really do. So I think a lot of people a lot of times don't take that into consideration. Like we do it all, bro, for real. So let's move right along. Let's out into the news. Let's get into the schedule release. I'm really mad. Really mad that I didn't listen to Jalen yesterday because he kept asking. He's like, "Yo, you gonna do a live episode? Independent media is the real media." Well, some of us, facts. If you know, you know, dog. If you know, you know. And I really wish I listened to Jalen yesterday. It's crazy. Like I enjoy the conversation of the people that I've come in contact with in this medium. East Coast Gridiron. I just respect the work. I'm always respect the work. S.E. Romero is another one he's always putting out content. If you don't know who that is, just watch him. It's a lot of Devi stuff, and he's always putting out content. So I'm always respect people that's doing the work. And then, with CFB Nation, bro, the conversations that I had with Moon and Jalen, like, it's a troll session, bro. Like, they like my little bros, bro. My little bros just be trolling me the entire time. And I truly enjoy that verbiage, that conversation. You tell people that... Some media people that are respected be capping. Facts. That's a fact. My dog Moon, I was just talking about you, man. What's happening, man? And so I was talking to Moon and Jalen yesterday, and they both was like, "Yo, you should do the emergency pod, And I fell asleep, man. And I'm embarrassed I fell asleep because I didn't know they were going to release the full schedule. I thought it was just the annual opponents. Yeah, the 3 annual opponents. And I was like, well, that's already been leaked. There's no reason to go live. I should have stayed up and went live. Also, another thing that Dante does, I said this yesterday, East Coast Gridiron, I love when he goes live and react to the game. Of course, he doesn't have the game on because, that's a violation. But just, have like stats and stuff and the lower thirds be fire. I respect that. I think it was the Indiana-Illinois game. He had like 700 or 800 people in there, bro. It was crazy, man. Moon, I just had one of your posts up here, too. Shout out to my dog, East Coast Gridiron. That's what got it to me. So let's look at this full schedule release. We're going to go through it next 3 years. We're going to talk about it. So bear with me. It might take a little while to get into this. So let's start with Alabama. 2026 opponents. They got Auburn versus Auburn at Mississippi State, at Tennessee. They play Georgia, South Carolina, Texas A&M, Kentucky, LSU, and Vandy. 2027, they play Auburn, Mississippi State, Tennessee. Those are the teams that they play annually, of course. Then Florida, Missouri, Texas, Arkansas, at Ole Miss, at Oklahoma. And then I was reading a lot of comments and people saying, well, look at how tough this schedule is. How tough. Dude, everybody's schedule is going to be tough. Like, let's stop playing around. Like, let's be serious for a moment. If you play in the SEC, you're playing a 9-game conference schedule, plus that one Power or Notre Dame opponent, bro. Dude, those 10 games are going to be brutal. And then you're going to have 2 games that you're going to play Circuit City University, and that's okay because your 10 games are brutal. The parity that we're getting in this sport is outer worldly. I never thought in a million years we'll see the parity that we see in this sport right now. And a lot of us, and myself included, because I've been very critical of some of the semantics that we deal with in the all season, the 2 transfer portal windows. I'm glad that it's down to 1, the 30-day, opportunity that players got, to leave when there's a coaching change. There's quite a few. I think we don't reward loyalty enough in this sport, and that there should be a loyalty bonus for players that stay on teams. But, we're at that point in college football. There's an enormous amount of parity, and all of these schedules are going to sound crazy. Just to be honest with you. 2028 for Alabama. They got Auburn, at Mississippi State, Tennessee, LSU, Vandy, at Georgia, at South Carolina, at Texas A&M. And then their 2029 is at Auburn versus Mississippi State, home against Tennessee for the 3rd Saturday in October, home against Arkansas, home against Ole Miss, home against Oklahoma, at Florida, at Missouri, at Texas. At Arkansas, their annual opponents, we know it's LSU, Texas, and Missouri. 2026, we got LSU. We got home against LSU, home against Missouri, at Texas, home against Georgia, home against South Carolina, home against Tennessee, at Auburn, at Texas A&M, at Vandy. 2029, and of course with a non-conference game schedule, some teams are going to get screwed. The team with 5 home games is going to be elated. The team with 4 home games is going to be pissed. That's just the way it's going to work, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's that's just the way it works. 2028, I believe, home versus LSU, home versus Missouri, at Texas, home versus Auburn, home versus Texas A&M, home versus Vandy, at Georgia, at South Carolina, at Tennessee. This is Arkansas for anybody that just joined. 2029, at LSU, at Missouri, home versus Texas, home versus Florida, home versus Mississippi State, home versus Oklahoma, home at Alabama, at Kentucky, at Ole Miss. So yeah, they're not going to like their 2029 schedule. They're not going to like it at all. So now we're going to talk about Auburn, their annual opponents, just like we went over yesterday. Alabama, Georgia, Vandy. 2026 opponents, we got home against Vandy, at Bama, at Georgia, wow, versus Arkansas, home against Florida, home against LSU, at Ole Miss, at Mississippi State, at Tennessee. They're not going to be happy with that. 2027, at Vandy, home versus Bama, home versus Georgia, home versus South Carolina, home versus Texas A&M, home versus Oklahoma, at Kentucky, at Missouri, at Texas. 2028, home versus Vandy, at Alabama, at Georgia, home versus Ole Miss, home versus Mississippi State, home versus Tennessee, at Arkansas, at Florida, at LSU. 2029, at Vandy, at Alabama, home versus Georgia, home versus Kentucky. What is this? Home versus Missouri, home versus Texas, at South Carolina, at Texas A&M, at Oklahoma. The Florida Gators, their 3 annual opponents. We got Georgia, Kentucky, and South Carolina. Get out the way, bro. There we go. Move. All right. 2026 for Florida. We got home versus South Carolina. Home, of course, we got the neutral site game versus Georgia, the world's largest cocktail party, at Kentucky versus Ole Miss. Home versus Vandy. Home versus Oklahoma. At Auburn. At Mizzou. At Texas. It's pretty tough. 2027 at South Carolina. Home versus... Oh, they're switching it up. Okay, so I guess the world's largest cocktail party are doing a Atlanta then Tampa thing. I think it's like it's still a neutral site game, but they're changing it up. Okay, home versus Kentucky, home versus Arkansas, home versus LSU, home versus Texas A&M, at Bama, at Mississippi State, at Tennessee. 2028, they're home versus South Carolina. Of course, you got neutral site versus Georgia, at Kentucky. Home versus Auburn, home Missouri, home Texas, at Ole Miss, at Vandy, at Oklahoma. 2029 at South Carolina, neutral versus Georgia, home versus Kentucky, home Bama, home Mississippi State, home versus Tennessee, at Arkansas, at LSU, at Texas A&M. Georgia, we know that they have Auburn. Florida, of course, world's largest cocktail party in South Carolina. Alrighty. So, 2026 at South Carolina, home versus Missouri, home versus Vandy. This is Georgia, by the way, everyone. Home versus Oklahoma, at Alabama, at Arkansas, at Ole Miss. Okay. This 9-game schedule is going to be brutal for everyone. Do you guys think in the 12-team era of the college football, stay with me, the 12-team era, I'm not talking about 14 or 16. We know they'll be moving up at some point. But in a 12-team era, do you guys think with this 9-team plus the 10, Power or Notre Dame schedule, that we could see an SEC team with 4 losses make the playoff? Question of the day. Kentucky, their annual is Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, like we went over yesterday. 2026, they're home versus Florida. They're at South Carolina, at Tennessee, home versus Alabama, home versus LSU, home versus Vandy, at Missouri, at Texas A&M, at Oklahoma. 2027 doesn't get easier at Florida, home versus South Carolina, home versus Tennessee, home versus Auburn, home versus Georgia, home versus Mississippi State, at Arkansas, at Ole Miss, at Texas. So that 2027 schedule they're going to like, because if they're smart, they only got 3 in-conference, or is that 4 in-conference road games? Yeah, so 4 in-conference road games. So they'll probably do what Louisville did this year, having the 8 home games and 4 games on the road. 2028, we got home against Florida, at South Carolina, at Tennessee, home versus Mizzou, home versus Texas A&M, home versus Oklahoma, at Alabama, at LSU, at Vandy. 2029 at Florida versus South Carolina, home against Tennessee, home against Arkansas, home against Ole Miss, home against Texas, at Auburn, at Georgia, at Mississippi State. LSU, their annual opponents, like we went over yesterday, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. 2026, home against Texas A&M, at Arkansas, at Ole Miss, home against Bama, home against Mississippi State, home against Texas, at Auburn, at Kentucky, at Tennessee. 2027, at Texas A&M, home Arkansas, home Ole Miss, home Missouri, home Vandy, home Oklahoma, at Florida, at Georgia, at South Carolina. Those road games are going to be tough right there. Mississippi State, annual opponents, Alabama, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt. 2026 is home Bama, home Vandy, at Ole Miss, home Auburn, home Missouri, home Oklahoma, at LSU, at South Carolina, at Texas. 2027 is at Alabama, at Vandy, home versus Ole Miss, home versus Arkansas, home versus Florida, home versus Texas A&M, at Georgia, at Kentucky, at Tennessee. So I believe that if they schedule their schedule right, a lot of these schedules, you can kind of see that, hey, yes, that core schedule is rough, but if you schedule your schedule correctly, you should at the very least have 7 home games if you do it correctly. Like, I don't even think there's a point of trying to have like 6 home games, or some teams end up with like 5 home games and 1 neutral site game. Try your very best to schedule as many games at home. It matters. That's how you bring in money to the program. Alrighty, so we got Missouri. I already told you guys, at Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. 2026 opponents, we got Texas A&M. We got home versus Oklahoma, at Arkansas, home versus Florida, home versus Kentucky, home versus Texas, at Georgia, at Ole Miss, at Mississippi State. So they're one of those who fall in line with the 4 road games. It look like most of these are 4 road games. 2026 with Mizzou. We got Texas A&M, at Oklahoma, home versus Arkansas, home versus Auburn, home versus Tennessee, home versus Vandy, at Bama, at LSU, at South Carolina. And for some reason, it always seemed like Missouri gets, there's no such thing as an easy schedule in the SEC, but it always seems like Missouri gets some way an easier, if that's a word, schedule in the SEC. Oklahoma Sooners, their annual opponents are Missouri, Ole Miss, and Texas. Of course, 2026, they got the Red River rivalry. Of course, that's neutral site. Then Ole Miss at Missouri, home versus Kentucky, home versus South Carolina, home versus Texas A&M, at Florida, at Georgia, at Mississippi. 2027, Red River rivalry, at Ole Miss, home versus Missouri, home versus Bama, home versus Arkansas, home versus Tennessee, at Auburn, at LSU, at Vandy. 2028, Red River rivalry, home versus Ole Miss, at Mizzou, home versus Florida, home versus Georgia, home versus Mississippi State, at Kentucky, at South Carolina, at Texas A&M. 2029, Red River. And then we got at Ole Miss, home versus Mizzou, home versus Auburn, home versus LSU, at Vandy, at Alabama, at Arkansas, at Tennessee. Dang, how many ats is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's interesting how this is working out. Have we seen anybody with 5 away games yet? I don't think we have. I do not believe we have. South Carolina, their annual opponents are Georgia, Florida, and Kentucky. That's a raw deal right there. 2026, we got home versus Georgia, home versus Kentucky, at Florida versus Mississippi State, home versus Tennessee, home versus Texas A&M, at Alabama, at Arkansas, at Oklahoma. Yo, that's rough. But, I mean, we say that for everybody, though, right? That's 100% rough. This is the SEC. If you guys are just catching in, the full schedule announcement, they've announced the in-conference schedule for the next 4 seasons, for 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029. Let's go on to Tennessee. Their annual opponents are Alabama, Kentucky, and Vandy. Their 2026 games are versus Alabama, of course, 3rd Saturday in October. Home versus Kentucky, at Vandy. Home versus Auburn. Home versus LSU. Home versus Texas, at Arkansas, at South Carolina, at Texas A&M. And then we got Texas. We're going to just do their 2026. Their annual opponents are Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. We got home versus Arkansas, at Texas A&M. We got Red River, home versus Florida, home versus Ole Miss, home versus Mississippi State, at LSU, at Missouri, at Tennessee. They got to go to College Station, to Baton Rouge, to Mizzou, to Columbia. Yo, that's rough for Texas. 2026, Texas, we're going to figure out who they are. Texas A&M annual opponents is LSU, Missouri, and Texas. They play in 2026. Home versus Texas, at LSU, at Mizzou, home versus Arkansas, home versus Kentucky, home versus Tennessee, at Bama, at South Carolina, at Oklahoma. Vandy, annual opponents, Auburn, Mississippi State, Tennessee. In 2026, they play home versus Tennessee, at Auburn, at Mississippi State, home versus Bama, home versus Arkansas, home versus Ole Miss, at Florida, at Georgia, at Kentucky. We found one with that. They got to go on the road 5 times in the SEC. 2026 Vandy schedule is brutal. Clark Lee and company got a lot to deal with. At Auburn, at Mississippi State, at Florida, at Georgia, at Kentucky. That's 5 conference games on the road in SEC country. That is rough. That is rough. And I think I might have missed Ole Miss. So just in case, I want to go back to them. Their annual opponents are LSU, Mississippi State, Oklahoma. 2026, they play home versus LSU, home versus Mississippi State, at Oklahoma, home versus Auburn, home versus Georgia, home versus Missouri, at Florida, at Vandy, at Texas. Yeah. So it looked like so far that Vandy's the only one in 2026 they got that raw deal where they got to play 5 road and conference games. And that's going to be rough. That's going to be rough. We got to be 100% honest. So you guys can check this out on SEC. If you look for SEC either conference or football on Twitter, they have the full schedule there. Also, if you want to go to like On3, any other college football based website, you can check it out on there as well. Let's go ahead and get into a governor ruling, and we're going to hand out some report cards, man. First quarter of the season is over, and of course, we're going to talk about my personal ratings or grades for the Big 12 conference. Like I tell everyone, these are based on my expectations versus the reality of what we've gotten in college football so far. I do copious amounts of research before the season begins. Anybody in close proximity to me know that. They know the amount of time, effort, energy I put into this show. Furthermore, the effort and time in the offseason. We went during this media day cycle this past July. We went to not 1, not 2, but 3 media days we went to this past cycle. We went to Big 12. We kicked it off early July, Big 12. In what city was that in? I keep forgetting. I don't know. It was Cowboys practice stadium. Somebody help me out here in the comments. Then a couple of weeks later, we went to and next year is going to be even rough because we're going to SEC media days next year. Then we went to ACC media days, and then after that, we went to the American media days. Both of those was in Charlotte, but we were able to go to both. And I say for me, and I think Moon and Jalen had the same sentiment. The one that I came back the most happy about was the American media days. It was that the access that we were given, teams were literally fighting to come over to us and do interviews. It made us feel important. I may go rogue next year and just do an all G6, media day tour. I promise you I might do it. Of course, we'll still have coverage at the other media days, but I personally may go on an all G6 media day tour next year. So we do a lot of work heading into the season. I think that's important for everybody that watches the show. Why we even started the ideology of a 1%er. So those of us who it could be the middle of February, March, it can be post-spring camp, where a lot of people kind of fade away from the college football scene. We're talking college football. And what East Coast is doing, Gridiron, Dante and them dudes is doing is crazy because they talk NFL too. And that's a lot of work. It really does. I appreciate my Sundays. I will watch a Bills game. And then this past Sunday, Bills weren't even playing. So guess what I was doing? I was at my setup. I was doing research, getting ready for the week, right? And then this weekend, I may have an inclination of where I'm going. I may end up going to Winston-Salem. I got a special feeling about this Georgia Tech-Wake Forest game this weekend. I really do. I want to go see Damon Claiborne in person. That's probably where I end up this weekend. Shout out to my dog, Moon, by the way, who got me there. And I know y'all be seeing me with the red cups. This is water, bro. It ain't none of y'all business in the first place, but I'm just letting y'all know it's water. It's high quality H2. I just like ice water, bro. It is what it is. All right, so let's talk about these Big 12 rankings. Media Day was better than the others. Yeah, American by far, bro. You should shout out to you, Governor. That's a lot of teams home and away to get through. Brother. Yes, there's a lot of reading, and I like giving takes. I don't like reading, even though reading is fundamental. So let's go ahead and get through this. First quarter of the season is up. That's why this thing of ours, this thing that we call college football, this thing we are so prideful to talk about, it's very short. I don't think people realize how short the seasons are in college football. It's incredibly short. We don't get but what we have, 15, maybe 16 weeks of the regular season, depending on how you slice it. Because we do have, everybody plays 12 games. We have Army Navy week. Then you have conference championship weeks. Then we get into our bowl games, which kind of topple over one another, and then we have our, the college football playoff. So let's say 18 or 19 solid weeks of college football is what we have, right? And I think that's being genuine, right? I always like to say 16 solid weeks of college football, and then really 34 to 36 weeks without college football is what we have in that sense. And the first quarter of the season is already over. Austin Simmons not getting his job back, by the way. I don't think you're wrong. My dog Dante said the same thing earlier. So it's time for some accountability. We reached the first quarter mark of the season, and just like we did back in grade school, it's time to hand out some grades. Did this with the ACC yesterday. We're going to do it with the Big 12 today. So who's on honor roll? All right, who honor roll? Honor roll, you need a 3.0 or higher. Come on down. First team I got on this list is Iowa State. And the reason I got Iowa State first, I know a lot of people probably will have Texas Tech first just because, what we just seen this past weekend in Salt Lake City. But Iowa State has won some games in some ugly ways. Like the Kansas State game that they played, that game feels like an eternity ago out there in Dublin, Ireland at Aviva Stadium. They gutted that out. A few of their other games this past season, they've gutted it out. We saw the Cyhawk game was a gut-out game. They won 16-13. I think that this team and Matt Campbell team have more ways than one or two to beat you. I really do believe that. I love the kid. They got a running back in Carson Hansen. Rocco Beck is very underrated, and all that he's been able to do is win ball games. I think they've turned the table. I remember right after Big 12 Media Days 2024, go back with me about 13 or 14 months. And I called Matt Campbell out. I said, if not now, then when, right? And they started to turn the table. We saw them make the conference championship last year. Yes, Arizona State absolutely put hands and feet on this team. A season going to conference championship. And that's probably your lasting memory of this team, right? Last year, just, seeing Cam Scatterbull and seeing that he's actually doing it in the NFL as well, just running all over this defense. And to see that this team really has focused on winning the war of attrition on the line of scrimmage. This team can go very far. This team can absolutely win the Big 12. And I don't know if you guys remember. I know Moon remembers, of course, because I don't think there's an episode of Governor of College Football Moon hasn't seen. Even before I was calling this Governor of College Football, even dating back to it was just a flagship show, CFB Nation. I don't think Moon has ever missed an episode. And shout out to him for that. And, I remember back in April, right? I think the end of April is when I switched gears. I went Baylor. I was all in on Baylor. But the beginning of March, April, I was saying Iowa State was going to win the conference. And then the more I looked into Baylor, I faded away from that opinion. And the same thing happened last year as well with Arizona, not State, Arizona. And glad that they're back this year, by the way. We'll be talking about them in a few. But sometimes I get frustrated myself. Like, yo, you were talking up Iowa State. You did your research. You thought they were the best team in the conference. But, you were lured away about everything that Baylor had to offer. And they just struggle against, top teams. They just do. They had an opportunity to win this game. They had an opportunity to beat Auburn. It didn't happen. We'll talk about Baylor a little bit later. So coming up, another A++. We got Texas Tech. I mean, who expected that beatdown of Utah this past weekend? Right? And I've heard some people say they expected. My dog, Road Dog. Shout out to Road Dog. Road Dog is another person. We're truly growing this show. Road Dog's another person in the media. His list that he does every week is Pick'em, S-Pop Pick'em. He does a phenomenal job with it. Somebody that I really respect. Another guy who's always grinding. He works hard, but he's another one that's always checking out the show. He'll comment on some. It's just a real dude. I love the way his approach to a show, because when you watch his show, by the way, it's on Rumble if you want to check out Road Dog's show, you'll just see the hat moving, which is really dope, and somebody who's next level as it pertains to producing a show and putting out a show. But yeah, Texas Tech, I know he had, I believe he had Texas Tech beating Utah. I just didn't know what to expect because we saw last year that the defense was definitely the problem for Texas Tech. It wasn't offensive coordinator Zach Kittley. It wasn't the running game in Taj Brooks. It wasn't Barron Morton by any stretch of the imagination. What made the game so interesting this past weekend in Salt Lake City was the fact that Barron Morton got hurt and Will Hammond came in and had an outstanding game. I think that's what made it so interesting this past week. You say, okay, this team is really scary. They made a guy, Devin Dampier, who's been outstanding this entire season, look pedestrian. So that defense is for real. And I say 55 million reasons. It's kind of a joke because I don't think they really spent 55 million on their defense, even though they're rumored to have spent that amount of money. I don't think that's real. I think they spent a lot of money on their defense, but 55 million reasons is hilarious to me. But Joey McGuire, he showed you, hey, yes, you guys been calling me transactional because of the amount of money I spent in the portal. But who won the national championship last year? It was Ohio State. That team in Columbus spent a lot of money on that roster the prior year, if you guys remember. So it looks like, it seems like the method is develop your players, find out where you're weak at, go spend a lot of money in the portal, and that's how you get a team ready for the national championship. That seems like what the marker is, how we moving the needle in 2025 of college football. That just seems like where we're at, right? But I love what Texas Tech brings to the table. I remember the game last year. Baylor hung 59 on them dudes. 59 points, that is. So, yes, they can win the war of attrition on the line of scrimmage. They can beat you with offenses, and just like I said about Iowa State, they got more than one way to beat you. It's going to be interesting what happened here in this Big 12, but I believe we're going to get some cannibalization very soon because of the parity that we talked about. BYU gets an A. They got a road test this weekend. And I remember last year, the physicality and the brutality in which they beat Colorado a season ago. It was all almost like, BYU should have been put on trial for murder, bro. The way that they beat them on trial for murder. It was a physical beatdown. Adrian Peterson, it was just a physical beatdown the way that they beat them. And I look at this Colorado team this year, and, the coaches have just made some blunders, bro. Coach Prime has made some blunders during his tenure there. And I'm a huge Coach Prime fan, so don't go there. I've been a huge supporter of their team. Don't go there with me either. But what I am going to say, and I'm going to continue to be honest about, is their inability to recruit out of high school. Yes, he's gotten some big names out of high school, but I believe a lot of the job that they have done in Boulder, not saying that he hasn't done a pretty decent job. We saw the struggles year one, but they were terrible before that. So I don't know how a lot of people just throw that out of the window. I'm going to just put that out there. But what I will say is a lot of it is transactional. A lot of it is getting players out of the portal, but we seen them get outmanned on the line of scrimmage last year. I saw them in a game against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was not their best. Georgia Tech did find a way to win, but I saw that they were able to at times win the war of attrition on the line of scrimmage, right? Caden Salter just didn't look his best. He looked damn good this past weekend. So BYU, I love what they have. Let the kid Hank, I always say Hank, Bear Backmeyer, LJ Martin, we had the opportunity to interview at Big 12 Media Days. That kid is amazing. And BYU is on upset alert this upcoming weekend. I'm going to say that. Even after the beatdown I saw a season ago, I hated the way Colorado treated Caden Salter. I didn't think he had done enough to lose his job. I just think if you looked at it and you paid attention to it, he was trying to be somebody he wasn't. His skill set isn't like Shador's. You don't go be Shador, go be Caden Salter, because we know that you have the talent to be talented and to put that on the field. So, but yeah, BYU who gets an A for me. Houston gets an A. Willie Fritz, effect is real in H-Town, right? Connor Wegman, effect is real in H-Town. And I think you get two guys with chips on their shoulders, man. And they're really doing the daggone thing. It'll be interesting to see how well they play during Big 12 play. They only played one Big 12 game this year against Colorado. Definitely dominated them in the second half of the season. So H-Town gets an A for me. Like I said, let's continue to see what that looks like moving forward. UCF, put some respect on his team name. Scotty Too Hotty is back in town. And we just got that feeling at Big 12 Media Days when, being around the program, I got to talk to their left tackle who's like 6'10", legit 6'10", couldn't believe how tall he was. We got to talk to their linebacker as well. And then the question coming into the season for UCF was like, well, who's going to play quarterback for these guys, right? That's what a lot of us were trying to figure out, who's going to play quarterback. But one thing that all of the players that we interviewed did, they kind of talked about Scotty Too Hotties. I'm talking about Scott Frost. They talked about the swag. They talk about like what he brings to the table, the aura that he brings when he's out there. Like, he left off where they were calling themselves national champions his last year there before an abysmal tenure he had in Lincoln at Nebraska. So, in our minds, we're like, well, it's different now, Scotty. This ain't Group of 5 level. G6 is what it will be next year once the Pac-12 joins. But, this is Power 4. He's like, okay. And I know it was UNC, but, they handle business versus UNC. I don't think I've ever seen Belichick lead a field like these. Head up, bro. Pick your head up. Y'all lost. Y'all got y'all, what handed to you. But you lost. So UCF shout out to them. Shout out to Scott Frost. Outstanding job. Can they continue this in conference play? And, at media days, there were a few teams we felt better about, after we left. TCU, I think we felt best about TCU after leaving them. Felt outstanding about, the Utes as well. But there was a few teams who we probably had lower expectations for. We felt better about. UCF was one of those teams. Another team we'll talk about later, Arizona, was another one of those teams we felt better about. And Cincinnati, Scott Satterfield, I think I owe you an apology, brother. I think Cincinnati's going to be competitive this year. I'm not saying competitive in the sense that they'll win the conference, but I say competitive in the sense that Scott Satterfield will keep his job. I do believe that 100%. So that's where I'm at with that. Alrighty. So after UCF, I got Arizona with an A as well. 3-0. I think Brad Brennan is really figuring things out. No Fafita. He's starting to look like himself again, and that makes me happy. And that was one of the things Moon and I talked about. A lot of times, I don't think people understand how difficult it is to move conferences, to change conferences, right? Not trying to make excuses for them, but add a coaching change to that, right? And so for all the quarterbacks that we're talking about right now, Noah Fafita is playing outstanding. I would love to see him get that completion percentage up. But he got, 712 yards, 6 touchdowns this season. Longest pass of the year was 85 yards, quarterback rating of 161. He's on pace to look like how he looked back in 2023. He just, of course, got to get that completion percentage up. He was interception prone a season ago, but it's interesting to see what he looks like. And some of that is, one, you got a new system. I think, what's my guy name? Dino Babers was the offensive coordinator a season ago. We saw him at Syracuse a couple of seasons ago. I just think that they're figuring it out. I think they're figuring it out. And also, don't forget that he had Tataora McMillan out there at wide receiver, who we know that has, first-round talent, which you end up doing sometimes, just forcing them the ball, right? So I think that's what happened last year with, Arizona. But great job through the first quarter. We got to start seeing what you guys are like doing conference play. But, they've handled business this year. They beat Kansas State recently, 23-17. What was that? Weber State that they beat 48-3. They put hands and feet on Hawaii. After Hawaii was the story after week 0. They shut that down real quickly, right? So I look at Arizona and I say, hey, Arizona can very well end up in the thick of things this upcoming season in the Big 12. So loving what I'm seeing with Arizona right now. They get an A. All right, so now solid work, still on the road, but we figuring it out. Cincinnati, B+ for me. 2-1, had an opportunity to beat Nebraska, and I think, if we go back to, Cincinnati's, schedule at the end of the season, we say, yo, you guys had a real opportunity to go like 8-4 this season, but you should have won that Nebraska game. I think that's what we'll be talking about, to be honest with you. Let's look at the rest of their schedule. So they got Kansas this weekend. It'll be interesting to see what we see. They beat a really good Bowling Green team. I know a lot of people probably don't want to believe that Bowling Green has a good team, but they beat a really good Bowling Green team. Hunk 70 on, Northwestern State. And then this weekend they got Kansas. I think Kansas has looked outstanding this year. So I'm interested to see, what that game looks like. But they got some few tough games, man. They play Kansas next. Week after that, Iowa State. Week after that, you said UCF, and then week after that, they play Oklahoma State. So it'll be interesting to see how Cincinnati look. But for me, they are exceeding expectations based on the expectations I placed upon them. Another B+ team, Kansas. Kansas is 3-1 and arguably could be 4-0. That border war game, one of the best games I've seen all season. Back and forth affair to see Jalen Daniels and Bo Prabilla going back and forth like that. I think it was an amazing game. Missouri was able to win that game, but, Kansas still look good, man. So that's why I still, even with the loss, I still got them at a B+. B-, Arizona State, just haven't look dominant this year. There were times last year that they really looked dominant. Yes, they were able to get the win versus Baylor. Baylor had opportunities to win the game. I mean, Arizona State, I think, forced, 5 turnovers that game and only won by 3. That's something to be concerned with. Sam Levitt hasn't quite looked the part. Tyson 100% does look the part. But it'll be interesting to see what we get from Arizona State down the stretch. How good will they be? Will be contingent on a lot of things. But let's actually see who they play next. Their next few games. Let's see what that looks like. Alrighty, so they play TCU Friday night. That's going to be a tough test. A really tough test. Then they got Arizona State. TCU is another team. Did I have TCU up here? I missed a team 2 days in a row. TCU would get an A from me. Matter of fact, no. TCU would get an A+ from me. They're playing phenomenally in the top 25. TCU is definitely getting a. Josh Hoover is just playing outstanding. One of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Also, what they got defensively, and my dog, Bud Clark, who should be on everybody's draft board heading into the 2026 NFL draft. 2 days in a row, I forgot to tell you. My apologies, TCU. It wasn't personal. We liked you guys best after the Big 12 Media Days. Y'all know that for sure. All right, coming up next after Arizona State, we got Utah. I think Utah could have been lower on this list. 3-0, 3-1, 3-0 before this past weekend. They were looking really good. It was difficult to calibrate them a little bit in the offseason. We knew that they got better. We knew that they had the Fano brothers. We knew that the arrival of Devin Dampier would truly help. And there's been a lot of speculation if this is Kyle Whittingham's last year as head coach, for an outstanding tenure, outstanding job that he's done in Salt Lake City. But this past weekend game was an embarrassment. Some parts of me wanted to make them a C+ after that game, but I didn't want to overreact after one game. Through the first quarter, they'll B-. Still on the road, they just a B. They're B-. Alrighty, now let's go to the middle of the pack. West Virginia 2-2, a great win, classic win. Border war, a backyard brawl. Great win for them versus Pitt. I thought Pitt had every reason to win that game, especially with Jaheim White being out for the season, who's West Virginia's, best player. Can Rich Rod get the bowl eligibility in year 1 at WVU? If he does, it'll be one of the best coaching jobs this year. 100%. C- Baylor. I could have went with a D with Baylor. Defense was a problem earlier in the season. Offense looked extremely well through the first few games. The SMU game, the offense was clicking. The Auburn game, the offense was clicking. Defense was having troubles. Arizona State defense shows up. Offense is having issues. So it's just an inconsistency for me. When will Dave Aranda be able to win big games versus big teams? That's a question I have. All's not lost for them. They do have an opportunity to go, do some damage in this conference. They already got one loss in the conference. What will you do the rest of the season, Baylor? I'm calling you guys out. Y'all have the talent to do it. Go make it happen. Go make it happen. Don't talk about it. Be about it. Colorado's at a D+ for me. And they're at a D+ not because of their players' performance. It's their coaches. Starting Ryan Staub after seeing him in mop-up duty has to be the most Rob Johnson, Nathan Peterman thing that I've seen in the last 20+ years. It has to be the most Rob Johnson, Nathan Peterman. And I mention those two because Rob Johnson got the Bills starting quarterback was, spot after a mop-up duty game versus the Indianapolis Colts at the end of the regular season, right? Then we go play Tennessee, the Music City Miracle, as the game is affectionately known as, a game that I still can't watch to this day. A play that I still can't watch to this day because Wade Phillips decided he had a bright idea. Well, Doug Flutie's out undersized. Rob Johnson, I think, should be the guy at quarterback. And we faced the curse of Doug Flutie for a very long time. Enter Sean McDermott. What was this round? 2016? 2017? He was tired of, Tyrod Taylor's up and down play. Tyrod Taylor has always been a quarterback. He has to see someone open before he throw the ball. He's not an anticipatory thrower of the ball at all. He had a bright idea of putting Nathan Peterman in, and then we got the Nathan Peterman game. So if I've ever seen moments like that before, and I called this from jump. I said it to Nino and Dino. I said, this is Rob Johnson, Nathan Peterman to me. And then after the game happened, it was like, and then, when Colorado announced that, Caden Salter will be starting, well, duh. If it wasn't Caden Salter, it should have been, Juju Lewis. How do you go from Caden Salter to Ryan Staub? That just never made sense to me. So the reason I have them at a D+ is not to play on the field because I've actually liked some of the physicality that they've been able to bring this year. It's just, I think, coaching. And they have to be better as coaches. And I think Dion will be the first to tell you that. Kansas State gets an F. Yeah, they get an F. They get an F. If Clemson wasn't playing as poorly as they were this year, I don't think there'll be a team that I'm more disappointed in at this point in the season in Kansas State. But Clemson takes the cake. But they're right down there with them. I think I say Clemson is 136th best team in the country based on talent and based on performance of what they've been able to do this year. Right there at 135th, right there with them is Kansas State. And then Oklahoma State is at an F. You know, the Tulsa loss last weekend was embarrassment. That game wasn't even as close. If you watched that game, it wasn't even as close as the score indicated. It was worst. I'm sure you guys seen the score, the box score watchers. You know, people got families, you know, don't get to really indulge and be a 1% of the way we are with college football. Yeah. No bueno. No. No good at all. I didn't even realize we were already in overtime. Let's get into the CFB Nation Top 25 rankings. All right. Shout out to the squad. Shout out to the gang. Shout out to Director Mike. Shout out to our communication strategist, Moon. Moon is the reason I'm in the buildings that I'm in each and every week. Shout out to my dog, D-Now. D-Now also pulls a lot of strings behind the scenes, and he broke down a lot of barriers and a lot of doors. Shout out to him. Shout out to my dog, Nino Brown. When you see us post a post on Twitter, that's Nino. When you see us, you know, put something in our community tab, the best college football community tab in the face of the planet is CFB Nation. Nino does that. So shout out to the squad. Shout out to my dog Boomer as well. Shout out to Jalen. Shout out to SC. Shout out to everybody, man. So let's go through this top 25. Some things I don't like about this. First thing I look at, I said this is awful. Why the heck is Texas Tech at 19? This is awful. But some of it I do like. Ohio State's at 1. The U is at 2. Ducks at 3. LSU at 4. Penn State at 5. Some of y'all got Penn State real messed up. Some of y'all got Penn State so messed up, bro. Y'all got Penn State messed up, bro. And I don't get it, young. Like, I got it before. Like, I get the James Franklin thing. I get that they're not going to wow you with scoring 100 points in a game or beating Circuit City University 88-0. I get that part. But some of y'all got Penn State real messed up. And a lot of y'all about to learn this weekend what Penn State is about. Right? And y'all still not going to give them respect. Y'all still going to have an excuse. Oh, well, y'all going to move the goalposts. That's what y'all going to do. Oh, yeah, they beat the brakes out of Oregon this upcoming weekend. Goalposts here. Oh, it's being moved. Oh, let's see them do it during the playoffs. Let's see them win a big... Man, shut up. Y'all got Penn State messed up. Y'all got Jim Knowles messed up. Jim Knowles is on a revenge tour right now, and y'all don't even know it. You're so hell-bent on James Franklin. You're so hell-bent on Drew Aller. Y'all don't even forgot they got a dog at defensive coordinator who's on a revenge tour. Because he thinks he was done wrong by Ohio State. I tell you that. Watch out for Penn State. Number 6, we got Georgia. Georgia can win the whole damn thing. I said what I said. Number 7, Florida State. Florida State continue this play. I'm going to say it now. They can win the whole damn thing. Number 8, Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma fans will be a little worried with the injury to John Mateer. I think the key during that time period, if they can find a way to only lose one game during that time period, they will be okay with their strength of schedule because they played a tough non-con schedule. If you think about it, they will be fine. They will be okay. Texas A&M, you guys know how I feel about Texas A&M. Marcel Reed, I think, is making a jump. Colin Klein is doing an outstanding job calling plays for them. Carver and Casey Concepcion at wide receivers, they're dangerous unit. Indiana at 10, they just put BTA to Illinois this past weekend. But they're on upset alert this weekend at Kinnick Stadium. I know y'all don't want to believe me. They're on upset alert. Number 11, Texas. Number 12, Georgia Tech. I was at Bobby Dodd this past weekend. That stadium is worth every price of admission. I would love to see Georgia State. I said Georgia State. Georgia Tech play this weekend. Forget Georgia State. I said what I said. And I probably will be going to the game. It's a 3.5-hour drive for me. So I'll probably end up going to Winston-Salem to go see Georgia Tech at Wake Forest. And plus I want to see DeMond Claiborne. To watch him and Jamal Haynes go head-to-head would be pretty cool. I would say Cyclones at 13. All right, cool. Ole Miss, I think, has been disrespected. And after Ole Miss beats LSU this weekend, we're going to find out about them. Tennessee at 15. USC is getting some love. USC is dangerous. USC is really dangerous. What is your thoughts on USC right now? Jada Maivia is playing outstanding right now, right? Not a lot of people are talking about them. Them in Illinois. We're going to find out a lot about those two programs this weekend. They play this weekend. Mizzou, 17, playing outstanding right now. Number 18, Alabama. They play Georgia this week. We're going to find out a lot about that team as well. Texas Tech is just way too low at 19. 20, Vandy, I would say they were too low. Michigan, great game for Michigan this past weekend. I did not think without their head coach, they would march into Lincoln and march out with a win. So shout out to Michigan. Happy for them. BYU, love to see them getting some top 25 love. At number 22, number 23 TCU, they should be getting more love. 24 Auburn. You know our motto over here, no more victories, but I'm happy with what I seen. Bro, the concern you have for LSU is the same concern you should have for PSU. The concern I have for Oklahoma State better hit a home run. Jalen, how do they hit a home run? What's your game plan for hitting a home run? Because I think that is bigger than just finding a coach. I think it's, they got to get the GM situated, figure out. They got to get the culture figured out down there in Stillwater. Now, let me address your second question. The same concern you have for LSU is the same concern you should have for Penn State. Why should I have that concern? Why should I have that concern? Let's pull some stuff up real quick. And I can't wait for you guys to move the goalposts. I cannot wait. All right. So I understand they played FIU, Nevada, and Villanova, right? But they've been putting up some points. Like, what is y'all concern with Penn State? What is it? Right? Drew Allen completing 65% of his passes. The backup quarterback, Ethan Grunkemeyer, do have over 100 yards passing this year. So he's played a lot in mop-up duty. Drew Allen has been sacked 3 times, averages 7.1 yards per attempt. Their running game is fruitful. Right now, LSU is struggling to do a lot on offense. Penn State can run a ball, and Drew Allen has been effective, right? And I get what you're saying about, yes, they do align. As far as my feeling on James Franklin, it's the same feeling I feel on Brian Kelly. So, Jalen, that's where you're 100% correct. That doesn't change, right, at all. But, everybody getting a little bit of touches at wide receiver. Pena got 166 yards, 1 touchdown on the season. Kyron Hudson got 156 yards. So I get it, but even with the game that LSU just had, I guarantee Penn State is still averaging more points per game. And I know what your rebuttal to that is going to be, well, LSU has played, Clemson and Florida. Okay, I get it. If both of those teams have looked horrible this year, but I get it. But yeah, I can't wait, bro. I promise you, I can't wait. I can't wait. I cannot wait for that game. And once Georgia Tech and Wake Forest game is over, I'm beelining to get back here before that game start. Because I'm going to be in my house before that game start. Moan, I ain't doing no triple dips, double dips, none of that, Slim. I'm going to be here before that game starts because I want to see it with my own eyes. Dante Moore, first true road test, and that joint. Dan Lanning is already preparing for the Mo Bamba jump. Already preparing for it. So, these are our rankings, man. Shout out to everybody. Jalen, bro, I owe you an apology. I should have went live last night. I know the SEC is about to release all that. I'm mad that I didn't, but I was watching ATL, then I watched Everybody Hates Chris, and I missed it. It is what it is, man. But great episode as always. I'm excited about tomorrow. Get to go live with my bro Jalen for College Football Showdown. I got to get these governor guests ready for the next upcoming weeks because I want to have some more people on the show. Shout out to everybody who watches the show every day. Shout out to East Coast Gridiron. Shout out to my boy Jalen Wilson. Shout out to my dog Moon Vibes, our strategist Nino Dino. Shout out to the squad. Mike. Shout out to everybody who's always in here showing love every day. Shout out to my dog Road Dog. Shout out to Squid 10 Toes. Like I said, me and him was texting each other. In the DMs talking about he's told me he was at TCU and SMU game this past weekend. I was like, it's sad that's gonna be the last Iron Skillet for a while. And also, Squid and Toes has been right about a lot of predictions. He said that Texas A&M was the best team in the SEC before the season started, and then he's also said that he thought that TCU can win a conference this upcoming year. So shout out to him. Shout out to the 1%ers. Merch is coming very soon. As I always like to say, there are no more victories in the sport that survive in advance. That's why college football has the greatest regular season. Until next time, y'all take care. Hey, show some love. Do something nice to somebody you normally wouldn't do. Always pay for it. All that good stuff, man. Y'all take care. Governor of college football. We're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's CJ
defensive minds. They have to be better on that side of the ball.